Everyone. So my name is Ashley Gregg and I am a senior right now at UC. Julie actually asked me to make this video for you guys. Sorry, I'm actually losing my voice and I'm on spring break, so I'm a hot mess. I don't usually look like this at school. Julie asked me to make this video for you guys to talk about something that I implemented this year in my classroom. I started whole brain teaching this year. I am actually at Mason Early Childhood Center in first grade, and I was going to make this video with my mentor teacher. We didn't get a chance to make it before spring break, and she's actually out of town. So I will be doing this on my own. But she did have me, I'm going to give you some things that she told me to throw in there as well. So basically, I'm going to tell you what whole brain teaching is, why I decided to use it, and how it's made a difference in our classroom this year. So, and I have notes over here, so if I keep looking, that's why, just so I don't forget to say anything. So, whole brain teaching is actually an approach that was designed to maximize student engagement. And this approach is used in a way that enables you to manage the classroom while also actively engaging the students in their learning. It focuses on active learning, and it allows students to become the teachers and teachers as the facilitators, which is actually a great one of the most beneficial things that we've seen so far. The purpose of this is it's a multi-sensory approach, and it's to enhance student engagement. And it's also joining the left and the right hemisphere of the brain, and it's actively using the full brain in their learning. There's actually 7 components to using whole brain teaching, and I have notes because I don't want to miss any of it. And you don't have to use all these. There's some things that we don't use. There's some things that we use all the time, but it was actually designed to use these 7 key components. So the first one is the class rules. And the class rules is meant to be rehearsed over and over and over again. We really started strong on the class rules because it kind of explains to them what the purpose is and why we're doing it, and my expectations for them. And really, when I did my research on this, a lot of teachers use it throughout the whole year, even after the kids really have it down. But we haven't used it as much as I would have liked to. But I think that's something that I'm going to change for next year when I have a classroom of my own. I think I'm going to use it a little bit more. But when you're using the class rules, you're actually engaging all 7 parts of the brain. So you're using the prefrontal cortex, which is for reasoning, the Broca's area, which is for speaking, and I'm going to totally butcher this, the Wernicke's area, which is listening, the limbic system, which is emotions, and the hippocampus, which moves information from short to long-term memory, the visual cortex, processes visual information, and the motor cortex is for movement. So the second component is the class yes. This is actually after we started the rules, we introduced class yes. And so the purpose of class yes is an attention getter. So I will say class and they'll respond yes. But they mimic my tone. So if I say class, 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 they're going to say yes, yes, yes. Or they really like classity, class, class, class. And they'll say yesity, yes, yes, yes. And that's really their attention getter, and it shows them like, oh, okay, we're ready. So that is actually getting their prefrontal cortex going. And we use it for like crowd control. So if they're doing independent stuff and they start to get off the wall, I'll do it for that. But also it's to start an activity. Hands and eyes are something that I don't use a ton. But this is, I want to make sure I get this right because like I said, I don't do this one very much. This is where you say hands and eyes and the students say yes, hands and eyes, and they snap. And so this just shows them like, okay, we're ready, and they get in position ready to learn. The reason I don't really use that is because I feel like that's what the class yes does. My kids know that when I say class, they know that like that's their time to to be on it. So I really haven't had to use the hands and eyes. The teach okay is the third component, and it's probably my favorite one. The teach okay is, so after I say class, yeah, actually, you know what? I'm going to do mirrors first because we usually do, sorry, I'm going all out of order. But I'm going to say mirrors first because it's going to make more sense. So I will say the first part, class, class, and they'll say yes, yes. And then I'll say mirrors on. So you can say it, mirrors on. And then they, that's their cue that they're going to mimic everything that I do after this point. So I'll say mirrors on, and they'll go mirrors on. And we just threw in like a ears on. So you'll see that in the video. You'll see me go mirrors on, and then they'll say mirrors on, and then I'll say ears on, and then they'll go ears on. So this is their cue that anything that I say after this time, they're going to repeat back to me. The hardest thing for me with this was to keep it brief. This is where I really state my objective. So one of the things that is really important for whole brain, and really any lesson, is you want the kids to know why you're doing what you're doing. Because if you just go into a lesson and you're not, and they don't know why, what's the point? So this is the time that I do my teaching objective. So, but I do it in terms that I'm not going to do what I say on my UC lesson plan. I'm going to do it in kid-friendly terms. So I do this by chunking it. So I'll say like a little bit of the lesson, they'll mirror it back. I'll say, or not a lesson, a little bit of the objective, they'll mirror it back. Another little part of the objective, they'll mirror it back. What's important with this part though, and I'm very deliberate when I'm planning this part, is I think of hand motions that go with it. So I saw when I was researching this, a lot of teachers that did it with math, they'll turn on their mirrors and their ears, and then they'll, so if they're learning how to divide, so they would do like multiply, subtract, add. So they have hand motions for everything that they do. So when they do divide, they go, I can't really remember what it was, but it's like divide, multiply, and subtract, bring it on down and bring it on back. So that's really activating that whole brain. So they're repeating it to you, they're hearing it, they have the hand motions going, and the purpose of this is it's sticking with them, and the kids love the hand motions. They think it's so funny. So now to go back to the teach okay, which is another component. After you do your mirrors and after they have repeated it back to you, they are actually going to have the opportunity to teach it to their partner. And they know so my carpet's back here, and I set them up. They're sitting in, we call them bus seats. So they're 2x2 all the way down. And you'll see, I think you can see it a little bit in the video. But they know that when I say teach and they say okay, they know that they're going to teach the person next to them. There's not, Mrs. Gregg, I don't know who to work with. They even know that if their partner isn't there, that they're supposed to just join a group behind them or a group in front of them. They still ask me every single time, who am I supposed to work with? But most of them know, okay, this is the goal. So basically what I say is I say teach, and then they respond okay. And then they're turning and teaching the person next to them, which is really like impacting those oral and verbal skills. So they're repeating the objective. So usually by the end of my lesson, my kids know the purpose of the lesson, and they can recite, any of them can recite it back to me because they're hearing me say it, they're mirroring it back to me, they're teaching, and then you'll also see that they actually switch, and the other partner teaches it to them. So they're saying it like 4 times. The really important part of teach okay is for the teacher. So I use this time to go around, and I'm kind of leaning in and listening to what they're saying. If the majority of the class is saying it correctly, then I know that I can move on. But if I'm noticing that they're really struggling stating the objective or stating what I'm asking them to state, then I know that I need to go back and review that for them. So that's been really amazing for me because it's an assessment right there. I'm able to see right there which one of my kids understand the objective and which one of my kids don't. I'm not as worried about if they can't really remember the movements. They always do though. It's amazing. They always remember the movements. But I think, like I said, that's such an awesome skill for them to use because it's just activating all of those parts of their brain. And so they're really, truly actively learning the content. Switch, I don't typically say it in a lesson because I give them enough time. My students know that once one person teaches, then the other person will just teach too. If it were something, probably math, if I really wanted them, if it were like a skill that they were using, making 10 or I'm trying to think, 2D, 3D shapes, if it were something I really wanted to like dig in there, I would probably do switch. But basically switch is after they talk with their partner, I'm going to yell out switch. Also, whole brain teaching is not quiet. So if you like a quiet classroom, this is not for you, but it's so worth it because they're so engaged and it's so meaningful. So basically you yell switch and then the kids like pull like an imaginary cord out from the sky and they say, uh-oh, switch. And then they like switch. I don't know. It's silly, but it works and they love it. The last part is, oh, I'm sorry, when I was talking about the mirror activates the visual and the motor cortex of the brain, which is really important too because they're seeing me do the motions and then they're doing the movement back. The scoreboard is huge in our class. And the scoreboard is actually how you involve the limbic system, which is the emotions into learning. And I'm actually going to take you so you can see our scoreboard. Let me flip it around, maybe if I can. Oh, it's not going to let me. Okay. Okay, so here's our scoreboard. Super simple. It's probably backwards. It sure is. Basically, it's just how will you help earn your class points today. So there's a teacher side and a class side. You will see me, it's backwards, so there's no point for me to keep it on there. You'll see in the video that they get points when they're doing their job, when they're following the 7 components. Sorry. After they earn a point, they just go, it's like a quiet woo. So the points are really important because it just gets them motivated to, it's like really dark now. There we go. It really gets them motivated in their learning. We do it so the first time I introduced whole brain teaching, they had to earn 10 points. The second time they had to earn 20, 30, and now we're on 40. And they can earn points. It doesn't just have to be during whole brain. It can be, the one they really like is anytime they get a compliment in the hall from another teacher, they get a point for that. Anytime they do a quick and quiet transition, they're getting a point for that. Anytime they're cleaning up the room and I don't have to say it a million times, they're getting a point for that. Anytime I notice, if I'm looking up and I notice that all the backpacks are in their cubbies, which is like huge, they're going to get a point for that. I get a point if they come to the carpet and they're not ready. And it's just very minimal. I just turn around and give myself a point. They're just like, oh. But they know not to make a big deal out of it. Obviously, I've never won because I just make sure that they win every time. I keep it really close too. So there's right now it's actually not that close. I kind of let them win a little bit. But they had a great week before spring break. So, and once they hit their goal, it's usually 5 minutes of extra brain break. The last one, it was like our biggest success yet. So I gave them puzzle time for 10 minutes after math. They love puzzles. So yeah, that's basically whole brain teaching in a nutshell. I hope that I explained it well enough. So the purpose of why I did it. So Mason follows a responsive classroom approach, which I love. I know it's Julie's class that we learned about responsive classroom, and you really, I learned a ton about it, but it's like once you see it, you realize like it's pretty awesome. I love the responsive classroom approach. So this goes in pretty well with the responsive classroom. The only thing that's doesn't really follow responsive classroom is probably the scoreboard, but we're not really giving them like treats when we reward them. It's has to do with like more academic time, or it's really, they think it's a treat, but it's, when I plan it, it's more for, it's enhancing their learning. So the reason that I did it was at the beginning of the year, we're only here 2 days a week, and I really struggled. My mentor teacher and I are very different in the way that we teach. She's very traditional. I'm very, I like the new and innovative ideas, and there's nothing wrong with that. We both just teach very differently. And so I was starting to notice that on the 2 days that I was here, it was great. They were really engaged with me, but as the semester went on, I was missing 3 days a week, and then I was coming back, and it just, we weren't on the same page. I don't know if that makes sense, but it was really hard for me to only be here 2 days a week. And so I was noticing some behavior problems towards the end of last semester. And actually, my supervisor came in and observed me. I think it was like my second observation, and she was like, wow, you have a very, very chatty class. I mean, I had zero control. It was bad. I was working on the doc cam, and we were writing, we were doing like interactive writing together, and I had like kids coming up in the middle of it and blocking the screen, and kids like rolling around on the carpet. And when you have 28 kids in your class, I mean, it's really hard to manage all of that. And so, she gave me some tips for like, what can you do to work on your management. But I decided that I wanted to research some stuff, and I follow like 3 trillion teachers on Instagram. It's like disgusting how many teachers I follow on Instagram, but I get so many ideas from them, and a lot of them use whole brain teaching. So I kept seeing it over and over again. And over winter break, I decided that I was going to look into it more. So I learned about it, talked to my mentor. She is amazing in the fact that she lets me pretty much do whatever I want to do. So I can try it. And she always tells me, she's like, this is your classroom. You do what you got to do. If it works, great. If it fails, good luck. So I decided that I was going to try to implement it. It's not a quick fix. It takes a ton and a ton and a ton of practice. The kids really need to know that your expectations. Some of my kids would, at the beginning, they thought it was a joke, and they're like, oh, class, okay, Mimi, and just would make like little comments. But now, I mean, they love it so much. They know my expectations. It just works really well now. And actually, my supervisor came in for my 4th observation. It was actually my Ed TPA lesson. So I was nervous about that. It was my first Ed TPA lesson. I was recording it. My mentor teacher was out of town. I had a sub in the room. My supervisor was here. It was like right after winter break. And I'm like, oh my gosh, this is going to be a disaster. We had only been working on whole brain teaching for like 2 weeks. And we did it. And it went so well, and my supervisor wrote like a million notes about how awesome it was, and even wrote on the back, like, my favorite thing she wrote was, holy cow, is this the same class I saw 2 months ago? And but it's really true. Like, they are completely different kids, and I think the behavior problems that I was seeing before weren't necessarily behavior issues. They were more lack of engagement. My kids just weren't engaged. But now that I'm using this, I mean, they are fully engaged in everything that I do. I will say though, this is something that it's very purposeful. You need to, when you're planning for a week, you need to sit down and you need to look at every single lesson, and you need to look at the main teaching point. And you need to say, okay, how do I want to teach this to my kids? Because it's not something that you can just do on a whim. There was 1 week that I was really sick. I had my plans, but I didn't have my whole brain teaching plans. I came in and I tried to wing it. It was a disaster. I will never do it again. It's very explicit in the way that you teach it. And so that's one of the things that I've noticed. I'm trying to think of what else I wanted to make sure to say. I think I pretty much got it. So I didn't get a chance to film it for you guys because we had testing right before break. But I am going to just like put in my EdTPA video, not the whole thing. It's so long. I'm just going to do probably the beginning part where you see the main parts, teach okay. You'll see me give them a point just to get a gist of it. And like I said, it's something that you have to be consistent on, but if you're consistent, it works. I mean, it's literally been a game changer. And I think my number one recommendation for all of you guys next year is to really, the beginning of the year, it's hard because you're really following what your mentor teacher is doing because you're not there enough. But I think that you really need to think as you're observing your mentor at the beginning, and even as you start taking over teaching at the beginning of the year, really think about what you want to do as a teacher. Because I think that my downfall was I was trying to mimic so much of what she was doing, but I wasn't being true to myself. I wasn't being how I wanted to teach, and my kids could see that. And so my number one recommendation for you would be to really think about yourself as a teacher and how you want your classroom to run. And it's okay if it's not exactly how your mentor teacher does it. In my pod, I have 3 other student teachers, and all of their mentors are very great and very willing to let you try new things, and they'll tell you if it's terrible. But you have to be willing to try. And if I wouldn't have tried this, I mean, I would not have tried it in my first year of teaching because I would have been too scared. So I'm so glad that I used this experience to be able to learn something new. I mean, I'm constantly growing. I'm constantly looking at what I'm doing and reflecting and seeing what's working. And so really think about that as you go into senior year, because it's a whole new ballgame. It's your classroom. It's not the second half of the year. But be true to yourself as a teacher and really think about how you want your class to run and have that discussion with your mentor. Because like I said, my kids did not take me seriously when I tried to be just like her, because we're different people, and they know that. And now it's just so much more meaningful, and they know that when I get up there to teach, I'm teaching from the heart. Good luck next year. I'm going to keep sliding the video from EdTPA. Julie, if anybody has any questions, you can give them my email. They can feel free to email me. You guys probably have your placements pretty soon. If you're at Mason, you're going to love it. All right, thank you. See ya.
In our new unit, we're going to be writing our own opinion writing. And you guys brought collections, and we're going to do that tomorrow. But we're also going to write our own opinions today about a little ant. Give me a connection if you've already seen it. Oh, just give me a connection. Give me.
Shh. Does he like the ant or does he not like the ant? They were gonna read. Oh, I want a new room.
Miss Emily's gonna read that with you later.
Yay!
And I'm sure she'll be very enthusiastic for you. All right, so classity, class.
Yes.
Mirrors on. Ears on. When you have an opinion about something, you may want to convince others of your opinion. But how do you do it? Number one, state your opinion. Number two, give reasons to support your opinion. Teach.
Okay. So
book today about a little ant.
What?
Class, class, class.
Yes.
Mirrors on.
Mirrors on.
Oh, is everyone doing it? I want to make sure. Mirrors on.
Ears on.
Ears on.
Ears on.
When you have a lot to say about something,
When you have a lot to say about something,
you can use transitions or linking words
you can use transitions or linking words
to go from one reason to the next.
to go from one reason to the next.
Teach.
Okay.
Join them. Nihal, you can join Evie and Alex. Are you teaching it?
You have to tell about reasons to make
Class, class, class.